in debate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I do take a moment in closing to certainly acknowledge the contributions made by honourable members in this chamber this evening, and of course extend my heartfelt thanks for those who have contributed to this important motion that I have brought forward on behalf of Yapa of Central Australia and the community of Yuendamu and the Walker family, the Robertson family, the Lane family and the Brown family. Madam Speaker, we've heard from a number of members in this parliament on the opposition and the crossbench, and I acknowledge that the Attorney-General has also spoken on this. As we have heard around those contributions, there absolutely were a complex range of circumstances that led us to where we are today, and that is that Kumanjayi Walker was killed, was shot 3 times in his home in Yuendamu. That's not to dismiss, you've heard from members in here, that there were certainly challenges in Kumanjayi Walker's life. Kumanjayi Walker was exposed to a number of areas where he needed help: mental health, substance abuse, FASD. We heard and saw in the Coronial areas that can be improved to better respond so that we don't see that happen again. Madam Speaker, silence is the biggest injustice, because silence means turning away from people when they're suffering instead of confronting it. Silence means letting harm continue because speaking up is inconvenient or uncomfortable. Silence allows those in power to avoid accountability. And silence, Madam Speaker, sends a message to victims, families and communities that their pain doesn't matter. When leaders stay silent in the face of violence, systemic failure or injustice, they become complicit. Silence might feel safe, but it protects the status quo. And in the Northern Territory, where lives are being lost, communities are grieving, and young people are crying out for help, silence is not neutral. Silence is fatal. Madam Speaker, this letter that was provided on behalf of the Justice for Walker Never Again movement was addressed to the Chief Minister, was addressed to the Attorney-General, to Steve Edgington, the Minister for Health and Aboriginal Affairs, to Robin Carl, the Minister for Children and Families, to Joe Hersey, the Minister for Education and Training, and to Jinson Charles, the Minister for Youth, Seniors and Equality. It was also addressed to the Northern Territory Acting Police Commissioner. Only one of those names are not here today. That is the Acting Northern Territory Police Commissioner. Out of all of those other names, one person had the courage to stand up in this parliament and speak. Not because she wanted to, but because she had to. And that's the Northern Territory's Attorney-General. So Minister Edgington, shame on you. Minister Carl, shame on you. Minister Hersey, shame on you. Chief Minister, shame on you. Minister Charles, shame on you. You all had an opportunity to speak in this chamber this evening. Whether you responded head-on to the coronial recommendations, that was your prerogative, or whether you took the opportunity to speak about what you are doing as a responsible Northern Territory Cabinet Minister in the areas of making life better for Aboriginal Territorians, you had a choice to stand up and to speak, but you were silent. The Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, Steve Edgington, and the Minister for Disability Services, Jinson Charles. Your silence is particularly the worst. Silence in this chamber today, silence when Kumanjayi Walker's life was taken in Alice Springs, in a confectionery aisle in Coles. No offer of condolence, no visiting of the sorry camps of the families. They were met with silence. Let that silence be known for what it is. Madam Speaker, I absolutely want to thank everyone who has contributed and their meaningful contribution, whether it's directly responding to the motion that was put up, whether it was sharing a lived experience from one of their communities in their electorates and their family members, as the member for Mulka did, the member for Arnhem, member for Daly, member for Arafura, member for Nightcliff and member for Johnson, all spoke about the importance of us needing to do better as a parliament and as a territory together. Madam Speaker, we have heard again about a number of things that people have called for. I want to take a moment to just reflect again on what Ned Hargraves has said in our communities. Ned has continually said, no guns, more peace. Keep culture strong, keep guns out. These are all important things to speak about, Madam Speaker, because they mean something to people. They mean something to my community. And that is absolutely important, Madam Speaker. So yes, there are many things that need to be done. The only contribution from the government, again from the Attorney-General, was saying that we're not going to commit to anything right now, we're working through it, and everything deserves to be worked through. Young people's lives deserve to be worked through, and this government picks and chooses what it considers and what it doesn't. Because right now, this week in Parliament, you have come in here and said that you are passing the Youth Justice Act on urgency, and you have not given anyone any time to consider the implications of that. You've not given anyone time to consider what the consequences are or the unintended consequences. The Youth Justice Act and the death of Kumanjayi Walker are interconnected. Because if we don't get the settings right when it comes to youth justice, and we don't provide the appropriate supports and resources for diversion, for programs, we risk seeing this continue to happen because those supports are not in place. So I reject the Attorney-General's comments today that in 3 weeks they could not have had a response in relation to those recommendations. I know, Madam Speaker, that when I was the Attorney-General and when I was a Cabinet Minister, we were forced by our Chief Minister to absolutely read the Coronials and the recommendations, and we would come back as a Cabinet for a special Cabinet meeting, and we would talk about how each and every one of us had to be responsible for implementing the recommendations, and that we would have regular meetings to inform and do progress updates around how the work was happening. So we must do better. There is no excuse, Madam Speaker, because every Territorian matters. And yes, I absolutely acknowledge that Kumanjayi Walker might not have been a perfect person. Who is? There should have been appropriate support services over successive governments to support this young man and his family. And successive governments have failed, regardless of who they are. We have gotten to where we have because a young man was able to fall through the cracks and he wasn't supported. He wasn't provided the interventions, the therapeutic responses, the help to get his life sorted and to stop the trajectory of him entering into the criminal justice system and later being killed. 3 bullets shot at him. Nobody in the Northern Territory or in the world deserves to die. There are absolutely things that we can do, and the Coronial Inquest provides that pathway for us to make sure that every death in the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker, is preventable, and that is important. It's incredibly, incredibly important. Madam Speaker, this has been difficult for a number of members in this parliament, and it's going to continue to be difficult for a number of members in this parliament as we wait for the government to table their responses to that coronial. I hope they approach it having reflected and heard some of the contributions in here tonight from members and having reflected on the coroner's report that we discussed yesterday in this parliament. Because whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, those 683 pages of the Coronial Inquest into Kumanjayi Walker, Madam Speaker, they are testimony of lived experiences, of pain, of truth, and of reform. And that is absolutely important for us to reflect on and to build on and to work on. Madam Speaker, in my closing remarks, I do want to take the opportunity again to just remind everyone in this parliament, not everyone has the luxuries that you will all go home to tonight. And I am included in that. Not everyone in the Northern Territory goes home to a physical house every night, a bed, a fridge full of food, a loving family. Until we address abject poverty across the Northern Territory, we will absolutely continue to feel the effects of crime and antisocial behaviour. And that is something that is not responsible of the government. It's responsibility of all of us to work and to champion on a territory level, on a local level and on a federal level to improve the living conditions for everybody across the Northern Territory. I want to absolutely, Madam Speaker, acknowledge all of the remote communities and encourage members who have not yet had the opportunity to get out into the beautiful bush to do so. And if you ever want to come to Gwadja, I will gladly meet you and I will gladly take you out and introduce you to the amazing people who call Gwadja home, because they're pretty special. And if ever we are in situations where we see the loss of a territory life, there is an opportunity in our culture to express condolence to go to a sorry camp, to talk to family and to express that. And that's incredibly important, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I thank everyone. This is an important motion. It sets out there the key parts. Certainly there will be more to say on this as time goes on. But Madam Speaker, I just want to acknowledge and thank everyone who has done the work. And again, I want to just acknowledge the Kumanjayi Walker Never Again movement, who has been incredibly strong and resilient. I want to absolutely again acknowledge all those people in the Northern Territory Police Force who do a good job, who do work every day alongside First Nations Territorians. And I want to give a shout out to all of my brothers and sisters who are the Aboriginal liaison officers or the community police officers in their remote communities who've had to work in a difficult climate for some time as we've navigated the pathways and the processes of the Coronial Inquest. Because they've had a difficult job, Madam Speaker. And I think it's important to acknowledge that work. The Minister for Local Government and Aboriginal Affairs, a great opportunity is before you to get out to Yuendamu and meet with them. You talk about local government reform. The coroner's given you the ideal place to start that, Yuendamu. There are 16 skin groups in Yuendamu. Each skin group recognises and represents the strength and the resilience of our continued culture. It is absolutely imperative that we keep that culture alive. It governs us, it sustains us, and it will help us all, black and white, into the future. Because when our culture is strong, our people are strong. And that's what we all must remember. Madam Speaker, I commend the motion and ask that the motion be put.